Hi, everyone. This is either the 14th Saturday or the 15th Sunday morning. I'm Dr. Charles E. Clough again, greeting you from the Church of Truth, Center of Awakening Consciousness, from their office, and hoping that some of the thoughts I have will be helpful for you on your spiritual journey. We're all on a journey. We're all doing this together. The election is over in terms of the voting. The disagreeing is not over. The conflict is not over. The hostility is not over. The name calling, the accusations, that's not over. But the election is probably over. So we'll have a new president in a couple of months. And then he will start to deal with a Congress that is very divided. It's a shame that we have this as the atmosphere that we were in and that we are in. In the 50s, when I graduated from high school, I went to work for Arrowhead and Purtis Water. That's the time when the smog in Los Angeles was just terrible. One of the jobs I had was driving, making deliveries. And the smog sometime on the freeway when I was driving would be so bad I would have to pull off of the freeway on the side and wash my eyes out with tears. And sometimes it would take a couple of minutes before they would stop stinging so I could get out and drive again. Smog is a terrible pollutant. When I lived in Los Angeles with my family, our dog was barking one night, probably about 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., and I walked out on the back porch, and my sister did too. She had heard the same thing. It was a man calling help, and he kept calling help. So we woke Dad up, and we all went out on the street and walked around to try to find it. And it was coming from a garage of one of the homes. We opened the garage door, and a man had connected a hose to the exhaust and put it through the windows, and he was trying to take his own life. We opened the door, pulled him out, and Dad provided some respiration help, and he pulled out of it. And probably a month later, he came to our house and thanked us for that. Carbon dioxide and carbon monoxide don't go well with breathing. And we know a lot of stories of people who have died because they didn't realize that the air they were breathing was not fresh and clear. When people climb into their homes in storms and have a small heater they're using in the house, sometimes they don't realize the pollutants that it's putting into their home and what it's doing to their families. So we have air that is not pure that people are breathing. A lot of people think that maybe most of our air is not really pure. So on the market, there are units you can get that purify the air, runs the air in your house around, and so that supposedly when you're at home, the air is good air. We also know that when you can't get air, and this is beyond pollutants, that you can't live. And there are sad stories of children who get locked into old refrigerators that are out in the back and suffocate. And we know stories of people who get caught in caves, and when the water raises up to where they can't escape, the oxygen begins to dissipate so much that people have trouble breathing and people die when they can't get oxygen. I think there's a parallel I'd like to bring into our minds, and that is what happens when people are not in an environment where there is love. When I look at the Trump family, I never see them smiling. And I wonder how much love they grew up with, how much they were able to experience what it's like to have the freshness of love. And so I pray for them and I feel for them. Not only for them, whenever you see people where it doesn't seem like they have very much warmth, they probably grew up in an environment where they didn't really have the fresh air of love. The freshness that comes when you're around people that have feelings for each other, where there's an emotion of caring, where you see yourself reaching out to recognize the value of other people. Love is the most powerful force there is. And it is the basic environment, spiritual environment, that we are around and within. But you can live in a bubble or in a closed system, like you can close yourself up in a house or a cave, and not be in touch with that love. The spiritual dimension is constantly trying to bring the love that's out there and the love that's in us through the presence of God, trying to get us to open up and experience that. And if we give just even a small chance to the Spirit to do that, it will happen. There are dams that have come down from the start of a mole or a gopher that dug into the dike. I had friends that were from farming communities. We lived in Lancaster for 5 years, and there were large alfalfa farms. And I would walk through there with my friends and help flood the areas that were growing the alfalfa. And every once in a while, there would be a dike that would break down, and we'd have to repair it. Or gophers had created a hole, and we had to plug it up. The interesting thing is when there's a little bit of a gap or a hole, if it's not plugged up, the water starts to flood through there, and it opens up more and more and more until all the water is being lost through that side opening instead of going out to the crops that need it. But if we could make that little hole a good thing, let's say that people are living in a closed system. They don't really know God or experience God the way God can be known. So the Holy Spirit looks for a small crack. And it works through that crack, and if it can get through that crack into that home or into that person, into that family, it can start to flow and start to happen and start to work. And guess who that crack is? Probably us. Who we are, something we say, something we do. That's the crack that gives God an opportunity to work into someone's life. The hostility that's out there from this election, that was there before the election and will be there after the election, how is it going to break down? What's going to ever turn this thing around? You know what? There's got to be God people that are spread around that can start opening up a crack for a different way that people can be. You know what? The spiritual dimension is maybe using this virus to do this all over the world. What could more happen for people to have to care about each other? What could have taken place to cause the whole world to lose their attention on a lot of these side issues, to have it completely on the health of their own people, and finding a vaccine is a world challenge that's going to be moving in to every country to try to save the people of their own race and own group. Is this virus something that the Spirit has allowed to occur? We need to remember that death doesn't look the same from the spiritual side. Death is a transition that we're all going to make, and our life experience is very short. Whether it's 5 years or whether it's 95 years if someone lives that long. So the whole picture is very, very short. So we have something happening that's causing a lot of illness and is causing death. Does the death cause some opening in our thinking and in our sharing and working together that nothing else could have? What's happening from the virus? We're just watching, but we know a lot is happening that's going to change the world. All sorts of families and couples and people have not been able to pay for their rents. Those who have not paid for rents are not being able to pay the persons that are the owners of these complexes. And they're not going to be able to make the payments to the big companies that they borrow the money from. So are we going to be able to throw everybody out of every place they live because they've not been able to hold up their financial obligations? No, we're not going to be able to do that. So we're going to have to create a whole different way of looking at what debt is and obligations and what we can do with people who owe things. And this is going to change all sorts of things. It's going to cause more compassion, more consideration. Hey, folks, the world is kind of turning around. It's like somebody spilled over the checkerboard. And now we've got to put all the pieces back on there and see where it's going to be. And hopefully, Congress, the new administration, will realize these challenges are going to be different than they've ever been before. But in the middle of that has been the need for God people. God people have to be out there. And you know, if it really is love that's taking place, it's not going to be partisan, and there's not going to be separation. And there's not going to be a lot of I can love them if types of things. It's going to be, hey, everybody's important. Everybody matters. How can we consider everyone in the things that we're doing right now? Hey, that's something we need to think about related to ourselves, our own families, and the whole works. We're on the other side of the election, but we're breaking into a whole different time. It's not going to be like it's ever been before. And all of us who are God people are praying to God's presence, the Holy Spirit, the Holy Spirits, the spiritual dimension, God, all of that is taking place and occurring because of God's love. And we're a part of that. And so it is.
I know your light is dying, just flickering there in your heart. Please tend it with care until you have some love to share. You won't be lonely if you start. Keep the flame alive if you believe it will survive all through the night. Though the wind blows cold and strong, it only helps along. Keep your love alive. If it is weak, it will revive all through your life. You must keep the flame alive. Keep shining your light against the darkness.